Good evening. Welcome to our regular monthly meeting of Hamlet City Council. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. We are not able to have a minister with us tonight, so at this time we'll observe a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Council, you have before you tonight the agenda for the meeting. What are your wishes at this time?
I'd like to see about putting an addition on the agenda, please.
Okay.
The proposed stage that was to be built at A&P by the Seaboard Committee.
I got some information that we.
I read something in the paper.
Yeah, but we didn't.
I don't think it's been formally discussed by council. I know that the Seaboard Festival Committee met.
We don't have anything on it.
Well,
we don't have any information.
The only information that I have is what was discussed at their last meeting, where they decided to forego putting the stage on the A&P parking lot and instead look towards building the stage on a piece of property on Vance Street owned by Mr. and Mrs. Lindsay.
And the reason I want to discuss it is because, if I'm not mistaken, the city had our attorney come up with a contract, and I want to see if there's any money that's been spent on that.
Yes. Oh, okay.
That's why I wanted it on the agenda.
All right. Let's put that on. Where are you going to put that one?
Old business?
Make it 7A.
7A. Thank you. I'll make a motion that we accept it.
No, second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. I will say Mr. Bowie and Ms. Massagee are both unavailable tonight, but we do have Mr. Bowie with us by telephone, so occasionally you'll hear his voice. And okay, you also have before you tonight the minutes of the regular July the 11th open meeting and the closed session meeting. And what are your wishes on that at this time?
So moved to approve.
Okay, got a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a second. Any changes, additions, deletions to those? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Thank you. At this time, we open our session of the meeting where we invite anyone who's out there that wants to speak on something that's not on the agenda for tonight. If you've got any concerns about something other than what's on the agenda, please come forward at this time. Come up, state your name, and thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen, or good evening. My name is Commander William Buddy Calder. I'm commander of 647 Military Order Purple Heart, which all are a Purple Heart city. But we have developed signs that you can put up as a city to let people know that you are a Purple Heart city. LB has them, Dobbin Heights has ordered them, and I'd like to see if y'all would like to order some for y'all city here. There's approximately $60 a piece, and y'all need 5 of them. So I'd like for y'all to take that in consideration if you would.
Thank you so much for being here tonight, Commander. I'm city manager. I'll be glad to sit down, talk to you, and see what we can work out, and I'll be glad to look into that if you would like.
All right, thank you,
Wonderful.
sir.
Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you so much for your service.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming tonight.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that's got anything tonight? If not, we'll close comments. Under old business at this time, item number 6 is additional items added for the surplus sale. And you have those items on a list before you at this time. One being a 2000 Ford F-250, a 1982 backhoe, trash pump, 4 trailers, and a 1984 bulldozer ripper. Council, what are your wishes?
Make a motion.
Motion to approve the additional.
I have a motion and a second. Any changes or additions to that? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise. Thank you, Mr. Bowie, you scared me.
Sorry, Mayor.
Okay. Okay. Item number 7. Councilmember McQueen has requested this item, the park down there at the railroad track.
Yeah, where do we stand on?
Sure. I can just run through a brief
And then I'll
overview
have
of where we
a
are.
couple questions.
Sure, absolutely. A few months ago, or a month or so ago, some cleanup efforts began behind BB&T here in Hamlet. In the course of that cleanup effort, there were some oil wells that were discovered on the property being the former Magnum Oil over on Raleigh Street. I contacted the North Carolina Department of Environmental Control. About 2 weeks ago, a gentleman from the department came down here. Mr. Stubbs, and I went to the property. He assessed the property, and he saw no issues of concern as far as the state is concerned. The only thing that I have for council is, what are your wishes in moving forward with the property? The state said that there was no issues if we wished to continue cleaning the property. As far as they were concerned, it would be a matter for council at this point.
My next question would be, who owns the property?
It's my understanding that it is the railroad's property.
Not understanding, but who owns it? We went on the property with our equipment, with our employees.
Sure.
And I would like to know why that occurred when ownership was not 100% definitively established.
Absolutely, Mr. McQueen. There was a significant amount of research that was done in regards to the ownership of the property. The property is deeded as being Hamlet Park. I spoke with the Hunts who rented the property for Magnum Oil. They told me that they rented from the railroad. It is my understanding that it is railroad property based on all the information that I can find going back to deeds to where the Seaboard Airline deeded the property to BB&T in 1965 for the bank at that time, and the gentleman from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Control indicated to me that he believed very strongly that where the oils were located, is in the railroad's right-of-way there on the embankment.
I just have a concern with why we were on that property in the first place. I know we had talked about it maybe one time in a meeting. I think Councilman Lindsay had wanted the property cleaned off, and I don't think the city did due diligence to get a firm grasp on who owned the property, and I think that put us in a world of possible trouble being on property that's not ours, with our equipment, with our crews, doing work like that. I mean, in the past 2 years, we have established the fact that we've built real property, some down here at the park, on somebody else's property, not doing our due diligence. That has nothing to do with the current folks now. I think there's some issue with the playground equipment up there behind Convenience Corner. I don't know if that's taken care of or not. I think we were wrong in going on the property. I think we spent the money of the citizens of Hamlet that could have been used to tear down another house or something, and I'm not 100% happy with how that was handled, and I don't know why we would even think about going back on that property until we definitively take ownership of that property.
Well, Mr. McQueen, we don't own that property on around the curve there where it's got Hamlet, and we take care of those bushes and everything. We've always taken care of all the way around that curve.
Is
Mayor,
that,
if I may just second.
has that property ever been used as a business?
I have no idea. It's on railroad property.
No. That's my opinion. I mean, I'm offering that, and I would ask the city attorney what would be your recommendation.
I believe Mr. Bowie had a comment.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jesse in a sense. I'm really glad we're doing. We have the efforts of cleaning up and all that and things we're doing. I think it's great, but we do need to have some kind of something in place that will protect us from continuing to go on the properties without us having some form of certification, maybe from the county, saying that it is the city of Hamlet's property, just to just really protect us more. I know we did some things, but I think we just need to have a better system. Again, this property here was a lot of confusion, the way it looked and just the way it was worded and how it was owned. So I don't know, just something we can put our heads together. I know we got enough people on this board and the city manager and the attorney we have. We can figure this out and make sure we cover ourselves in the future.
Thank you.
Well, I would just say that we need to be legal in whatever we're doing on the property. It's got to be legal. And unless we own it or have been given permission or something in writing, I don't see
Yes,
where
sir.
we need to be on the property.
Well, this also started from a consensus vote on, in closed session, clearing the property in January of 2016.
And there's nothing wrong with that, if we have authority to be on the property.
We cut grass on private property every week.
I asked if the attorney could give us a recommendation. I'm not gonna argue about what we do or
Okay.
what we don't do.
Okay,
Just because you do something doesn't make it right,
okay.
period.
Mr. Borfus.
And let me start with a question. Is this the only property that the city regularly or has done maintenance for that we think is owned by the railroad, or are there other properties in the city?
Yeah, apparently on around the curve there, we've been keeping up a real nice area on the bank that belongs to the railroad. Been doing it for years.
Well, and I'm going to apologize. I'm going to give sort of a long-winded answer. I think council members are right that just because the city goes on a property and where the city doesn't make it any, when we don't have any more right than other people, it's still trespassing. So you need to have either permission, or you need to own the property, or you need to have gone on pursuant to some sort of legal authority like minimum housing or public nuisance. So the flip side of that is that if the city went on the property, the title's not clear, who owns it, and they did some good work like cleaning it, it's not clear to me the city had any liability. And I think maybe what Mr. McQueen's getting at is, what if you hit an oil tank, or, if somebody got hurt or some railroad property got damaged, and something like that. It could be very serious if we didn't have
But what if you
no
uncovered
permission.
an environmental issue? We dodged a bullet because they did not.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think I'd say, I'm not hearing anything that says the city has liability now, and I think the railroad would probably say, thank you for doing that work. It may be that, and here's why it's kind of a long-winded answer, is there's a trade-off here. Is it may be that the easiest thing to do is just get some kind of blanket written permission from the railroad that when there's work that needs to be done, to do that. The other way you could handle it, and I think one of the reasons staff has been hesitant to pull this trigger, is you could, have a proper title search done every time there's property that needs to have work on it, but that's slow and it's frankly expensive. So I can appreciate why it might not have been done. The other thing is that, is the mayor suggested, I mean, there are a lot of properties where, something gets trimmed here and there, and frankly, that's pretty common practice in a lot of jurisdictions.
And if I could draw a distinction, and I think the mayor would agree with me on this, what was going on down there was basically a clear cutting of a pretty good piece of property. It wasn't maintenance, it was
Yeah.
actually going in and cutting it out. Now, you got to agree with that.
That's right.
And I think that's different than taking the mower and zipping through the right of way. I mean, we went on there, how many people was down there working on it?
Several, I would say 3 to 5.
3 to 5, how many pieces of equipment?
I would say 1 or 2.
Is that a normal routine practice when we're cutting the right of way? To have a dump truck? I mean, I went down there and I saw heavy equipment and several people down there.
Yes, sir, Mr. Quinn. If I can just speak to it briefly, to put a button on it, I again apologize, as I've said to council several times, for the miscommunication with this issue. I take full responsibility for the way that everything unwound. As we've said before, and Mr. McQueen touched on, Mr. Lindsay, the mayor, and I briefly touched on this, but at the end of the day, it was my decision, and I take full responsibility, and I apologize for not doing a better job of keeping council informed as to what was going on at the Raleigh Street property.
I still say I'm glad we're cleaning property. To me, that's not a big issue. And if there's a property we can clean, it may not be the opinion of another member, but as far as my concern, I'm glad we're cleaning. But we got to start covering ourselves getting on properties that may be in question if it's ours or not.
Thank you.
Moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Bowie.
what are we gonna do moving forward on that? Is there any plans to go back on it? I don't wanna see us on it until.
I would defer to council's opinion on that matter.
Do I need to offer a motion to that, or?
Well, I like what Mr. Morpheus said is, just make it that if we don't own the property, that we get, release from somebody to clean it up. It's a real eyesore. But if that's true, like I say, we got some more area around through there that we've been keeping up for years, apparently belongs to railroad.
Well, the bank does appreciate what we did because they have security issues that,
Yeah.
you've ever gone in the BB&T and they've got all this.
Yeah, research that, see what we need to do and bring it back to council.
Before anything's done, I would just like to know that we've got clear permission to be on that property.
Sure, absolutely, Councilman.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry to belabor the
Yes.
point. Would you like a formal title search to be done, or just, do you want me to check with Jonathan? We can kind of put our heads together about next steps.
I say just let Jonathan look at it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't,
that's
I
fine.
hate
What
to
you can
spend the
come up
money
with.
for a title
Yeah.
search on
Yeah.
a vacant piece of property.
No offense to that.
That's, okay, thank you. Next item of business is 7A, which was added, some time ago. We talked about a contract with Seaboard Festival about a stage, and apparently we have spent considerable amount of money with our attorney and didn't get the contract. And, okay, go ahead.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, we.
State your
Seaboard-
name.
My name's Kim Lindsay, and I'm the president of Seaboard.
There you go.
We actually did get a contract from the city attorney. We read it, we enjoyed it, we appreciated it. It was lovely, thank you very much. Our issue was, the bottom line of that contract is that at any point in time, a future council down the road decides, we don't like the stage and we're gonna tear it down anyway, they can just reverse the vote, and down comes the stage. So we went to a Plan C and are putting the stage in a place that will be our property that we can protect, still use, still loan out, still rent, but it'll be our property and we can protect it.
But it was my understanding when you came and gave the presentation, you actually stood there and said that we're going to build it and give it to the city, no strings attached. And I think one of us asked, what if we do something else with the property? And you said that it would totally be up to us.
Well, what we asked for was, and Jonathan Blanton and I went and read the tape, and we asked for 5, 10 years, 15,
To use it on
20
Seaboard Festival Day.
for the stage to stay put. And when the contract came back, it was, well, it's a contract. It's always got a way to go around. So if you feel, Mr. McQueen, that we incurred some expenses with the attorney that we need to compensate you for, you just find out how much it is and we'll write you a check.
Okay. I mean, I do think that.
This is all I can do for you.
Yeah, but
It's
I
offer
mean,
you a check.
I'm just going back to what you originally said.
Yes, sir.
You said that, we're going to build it, give it to the city, for the city to do. I think somebody said, what if we build a city hall, or what if we, whatever? And you said that there would be no strings attached, and then.
If we gave it to you, there'd be no strings attached. Will we give you what we're building? That is a very good possibility that our board is discussing. We've not made a final decision.
No, I'm not talking, I'm talking about the original one at the, I just feel like that you told us that you were, what you said that everybody was agreeing upon, and then whenever he put it on paper, it's like everything changed.
Yes, it did.
And I don't,
Because again,
just wondering
we
why
feel,
it changed from
we
what you said
feel
to the contract.
that any council coming down the road could take the vote and say, we've decided we want it to go away. We voted for it, and now we're going to vote against it. We felt that it was safer to have it on a piece of property that we could control. We certainly did not want to restrict the city from doing anything on that A&P property. I would welcome some growth on that A&P property. I would love to see something built on that property. It become a business, a doctor's office, anything that brings anything into this town. And for us to go build something on it and tie your hands for 10 years because you've got a gentleman's agreement with us, horrible way to do it. So we found.
Which is why we were gonna have a contract, and,
Yes.
I think this council's went above and beyond gentlemen's agreements. I think that was.
Yes, and I
We've
certainly
totally
do appreciate
found out
it.
that's happened in the past, and we've
We
not done that.
appreciate it. We
Gentlemen's
appreciate what
agreement.
you did. We appreciate what you voted for. We appreciate what you agreed for. But in looking at it, we found what we think is a better option for everyone
And there's
concerned.
nothing wrong with that. It's just my concern that the city spent, I don't know how much was the. You have any
Around
idea?
$800. I
How much?
don't have the figure in front of me, but I believe it was around
I didn't know it was
$800.
gonna be asked about
1,600
tonight, so I didn't.
How much?
Could have brought my.
$1,600, I believe is what, I was looking at that thing the other day.
I mean, I think there should be some compensation.
If you
Well-
feel that the Seaboard Festival, a nonprofit organization that puts $15,000 a year back in this community, needs to write the check for that, you present me with the bill and I'll have you a check tomorrow.
Well, I'm just trying to understand why it changed. I mean, we would, if we.
It changed because we felt it was the better place to put
The
it.
other thing, if I might add into, since I'm living in our house, but is that this will probably still come about. We're getting ready to donate the land to the Seaboard Festival. We ran into some informal discussions with grant money, and they didn't want anything to do with a
Temporary,
temporary
home.
where you could tear it down next year. So with us donating the property to the Seaboard, now the Seaboard can go for the grant money to build this for the community. And eventually, my understanding, the discussion is that they hopefully will be able to turn around and work a basis donation back to the city to the property in the same type of thing that you can't tear it down as in the Lions Club. You're built on city property, but the Lions Club has use of it, and the city would have use of the thing, but they couldn't tear it down until you've abandoned, we'll say you've abandoned it. And that was part of the reason. So the contract could still basically come about. It just might be a little further down the road, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, but it just seems to me that the biggest point of contention was that one issue. And I remember you distinctly saying that was not going to be an issue. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe I didn't hear that.
the contract, Mr. McQueen, is not an issue for us.
No. I'm talking about the issue of something happening and the city taking that stage down at some point.
Well, and when
Did
it
I
was-
misunderstand something when you said that?
When it was a $10,000 stage, it wouldn't hurt so much if it stayed up 10 years and it got tore down. Now we're looking at fencing in the property for security. We cannot do that on your property. We're looking at building a storage building so we can put things for the entertainers in the storage building. And lo and behold, down the road, we're hoping to put restroom facilities in there. And I certainly can't put restroom facilities in your asphalt parking lot that you could possibly decide to tear down someday down the road. It's
Well, I
not
mean,
it's not financially
all
advantageous
that-
for us.
All that sounds good, and I'm not saying that it's a bad idea. I'm just saying that maybe we got the cart, or maybe your committee got the cart before the horse on this situation, and
I think that
possibly
rather than that,
we
I
wouldn't
think
have
that
had to have spent the money on this contract.
we may not have. I think that in reviewing it, we came up, looking at the contract, I think we came up with a better option for everyone. I don't think that we started out in June to defunct city council and take advantage of you and get a contract that we're gonna toss in the trash. Again, we may very well use it. Maybe it needs to be massaged a little bit when we do. There's nothing that says we won't use it. We didn't come in here to pull the wool over your eyes. In looking at it, we realized there was a better option for everyone, not just for us, for everyone. The city doesn't have to say, oh gosh, Dr. So-and-so, we could love to sell you that property, but we can't because Kim Stage is there and you know how she's gonna be.
But when we Kim stage, it would be the Seaboard stage.
But
It wouldn't be Kim stage. Right? It would be the Seaboard.
yes, that's correct,
It
Mr.
would be
McQueen.
the-
I was making a funny joke, an example, and I apologize.
But I mean,
for that.
it would be the Seaboard committee stage.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Well, regardless of anything else.
I mean, I have an issue with the city spending the money on that. I don't know what other council would have to say about that, but I just wanted to bring that up.
It's done. But I will say this, you probably made the best decision. I just wish we'd known about it before. Simply because we don't want to hamstring another council down the road if they decide to do some kind of city building or something over there.
That was the thing that continued to come up in
Nothing
our
on our
minds
radar
is
right now.
not 2 years, not 4 years, but what
Yeah.
happens in 5 years when you
Yeah.
have to turn down something fabulous because there's a stage sitting
Yeah.
there and you don't want to be the people who tears down the stage.
And just for complete clarification, there was nothing said by this council that they would tear the stage down.
No, but the contract is written that way.
Okay,
Yeah.
but this
contract is
council did
written.
not say that
No.
whenever we
This council
talked.
never said, let me say on
Okay.
the record, this council never said, you're gonna build a stage and a week later, we're going to tear it down. We were preparing ourselves for councils down the road, for economic improvement down the road, and the contract was written in the way it should have been written, which was, you still need to be able to access your property if you find something to do with it.
Okay.
And we support that completely.
Okay, and the next question, and you would probably answer this, and if that does come, and this may benefit to may help you in the long run, What about zoning of that property down there?
We've already looked into
already
zoning.
zoned.
Would that be okay?
The
We-
zoning of the Vance Street property where
Yes,
the proposed
the
stage will
Lindsay's
be.
property that they're gonna donate.
It
You'll
would
need a
likely
s-
need a special
we
use
need a
permit
special
similar
use
to what
permit.
we're doing here tonight. So that would come back before councils for consideration to get the special use for that property to use for the purposes that the Seaboard Festival wishes to use it for.
Okay, I mean, I was just, for your benefit, that may be something that you may need to know before you.
We're already working on it.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lindsay.
So nobody thinks the city's just gonna pay it and that's gonna be good, or, I mean.
Well, I think the whole issue is not so much where the stage is gonna be, who's gonna own it, who's have it, it's the money that was spent on having the contract drawn up to the specific criteria that Miss Lindsay said that night. And I told the city attorney, I said, well, that's fine, I think that's a good thing to do, but we need it in contractual agreement, written up to say that the property will be donated to us with no strings attached. We can move it, do whatever we need to do at any time, which we would have no plans to do, but then you would never know. So the issue, and then he draws up the contract. Now, if we'd have known prior to his drawing up the contract, it wouldn't have been an issue. But that's the problem. That's what Mr. McQueen is referring to. Why should we incur, what, $1,600 or so
Went through like 4 different attorneys up there, three different attorneys.
I
for a
didn't know we were-
mistake?
I didn't know we were going to be discussing this evening. Otherwise, I would have brought my bills and they're
Yeah.
a public record, and I could have had it all itemized out for you. So I could get it down pretty close, but I need
Well, I
to know
don't
about
care,
that
just
in
ballpark
advance.
figure, but somebody said $1,600, I don't know.
I spent about
Close
2 to
to
3
$1,000,
hours on.
I mean, it could
this
be
project.
1,400, it could be 2,000, I don't know, don't care. But that's the issue, is the money that was spent for you to draw up a contract per their specifications, and then change it after the contract's drawn up. You don't dispense with your fee,
No, sir.
okay? So somebody's gotta pay it, either the city, or the Seaboard Festival, or negotiate or something. Somebody has incurred an expense for this
Well-
change of plan.
You know, on the same kind of line, y'all turned down my offer for a park on Jefferson Street. You came back and said you wanted that park, and I called the surveyor out because I was gonna give you more property. And then you turned around 2 months later and turned it,
Are we talking council, or are we going into more or less personal?
well, but I'm
it's
sorry,
a
but I didn't
personal agenda.
send y'all a bill for the surveyor.
Well, a contract was never drawn up by any attorney or anything. That's.
You voted to accept the
Well,
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I will be glad to get with the city attorney to get a definitive cost for how much approximately was spent on drafting the contract with the Seaboard Festival, and I can submit to the Seaboard Festival's consideration some type of reimbursement plan based on a percentage of the cost, and have that for the Seaboard Festival's committee review and council's review to reach a more equitable, amicable solution
Well, I
on this
don't have-
matter, if that's council's
yeah, I
wishes.
don't have a vote, but I think it's ludicrous to turn around and charge somebody that's a nonprofit in the city of Hamlet for something. I mean, we've done it, we've eaten it, we've paid it. I just, I think I just don't
About
see the
getting the-
point.
Getting the figures and put it on the agenda next month when everybody's here.
I can certainly do that.
And
Yes,
that
sir.
way that gives him time to come up with the figures as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's move along to new business, item number 8. At this time, we're going to go into a quasi judicial hearing for James and the Addie Joe Jenkins special use permit. The attorney wishes to make comments prior to the time we do this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and keep these brief, but I know it's been a while since we've done our training on quasi-judicial proceedings, so I thought it'd be helpful just to review some of the basics. First thing is that if any of our board members, and this of course includes Mr. Bowie, who's participating by phone, thinks that you might have a conflict of interest, we need to know that. That's a problem if it later turns out that there is a conflict of interest and it wasn't disclosed prior to the hearing. So conflict of interest can be you have a financial interest in the project, you have a close personal or associational or familial relationship to the applicants. You have an opinion that's made up in advance of the hearing that can't be changed. You know, you're either completely for it and that can't change, or you're completely against it and that can't change. Those are all conflicts of interest. If there's any other thing you think might be one, but you're not sure, let us know as well, because that way we can figure that out. So that's my first point for you. The next thing I want to remind the council of is that a quasi-judicial hearing is sort of like a miniature court hearing. So all the testimony you hear tonight will be sworn testimony, and anybody who wishes to speak, including our city staff, needs to be sworn in before they speak. You have to make your final decision based on the evidence that's presented. So if you know generally about the project from the community or people have talked to you about it, that can't be part of your decision. It's what you hear tonight. And based on that, the question you're going to ask is, and I'm just trying to pull up the ordinance here, and this is actually it's in our zoning ordinance. You want to ask yourself several questions. And our ordinance specifically says, the city council shall not grant a special use permit unless it finds that the use for which the permit is sought will not, one, adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhood. Two, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or public improvements in the neighborhood. So those are your two standards. Won't adversely affect the health and safety, and won't be detrimental to the welfare or use of surrounding properties. And if you find those two things, then you can grant the permit. With a quasi-judicial hearing with a special use permit, you can also add conditions if you think they're necessary to either bring it into compliance with the ordinance or to kind of uphold the spirit of the ordinance. Maybe you think it needs more of this or less of that or things like that. You have that authority. But any conditions you add should be reasonable, should be related to the project. You also will need to make a written decision, and it's more than just having a vote that is recorded in the minutes. And this is not as cumbersome as it sounds. As I mentioned to the mayor before the meeting, you'll want to make some findings of fact, so it'd be helpful once the hearing's closed to talk a little bit about why you think the permit should be approved or denied. And then based on that, you reach what are called conclusions of law. We think it meets this first standard about health or safety, health or safety, and we think it meets the second standard. And I'd be happy at the appropriate time to walk you through that. And then if you approve the permit or if you deny it, you can make that decision tonight if you choose. You can also continue it to a later meeting. But if you approve it tonight, we can bring the written permit back to you for final approval next month. So the applicants can know up or down tonight, but we'll finish that last procedural step next month. Believe those are all the things I wanted to go over with the council. If you have any other questions for me, please let me know. That's all I have at this time.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. All right, at this time, we'll open the public hearing on this matter, and we would ask anyone who is going to make comments on it tonight to please come up right now and be sworn in by our city clerk.
Wait for Gail to come in. Yeah, if you all can get your right hand on the Bible. Okay, place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand. And I'm simply going to read this and you just say after me. Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, whoever is going to make the initial presentation, please state your name and the microphone. Tell us what's going on.
They put me on the spot.
Right.
My name's David Jenkins, and I'm here on behalf of my mother, Jo. So they're putting me on the spot here, but we, mother and my dad bought the VFW recently, and it's such a fine piece of property. We hated to let it just go to waste, and we've had some really good ideas about what we want to do with it, and the construction's being done right now. Fire chief's been over, city manager's been over. Who else? county inspector has been over. And we don't really have a timeline yet to when it's going to be finished. So everything's kind of in preliminary stages. Our main goal right now is to get it up to spec. And there was a lot of work that was needed to be done. But the primary goal for right now, I do think, is just to have like a place where people in the community, the city, can go and have different events, receptions, stuff like that. And with that view, I think it's going to draw a lot of interest, not just from Hamlet, but from the county. And then when you get maybe the chamber involved and the marketing and all that, I think it has the chance to become something really special in Hamlet. And hopefully y'all will, I know some of y'all have come by, city managers come by, and I think it's dynamic. It looks good. And like I said, for right now, the main plan is just to have like an event place where people can meet, people can have receptions, 16th birthday parties, maybe even places that say have folks in Wilmington and folks in Charlotte could meet in Hamlet by our city lake and have like a meeting, some type of businesses or something like that. Just a way to put a positive spin on what we're doing here in Hamlet. So, you want to add anything, Mrs.?
My name is Shirley McDuffie. The only thing I would like to add is one of the things that we've been talking about, and I call them Donald and Joe, but I add a Joe and James Jenkins, is we want to have a military wall. We want to recognize the veterans that have served Hamlet and the various counties. I know we've had one pilot who was shot down over Vietnam, Bobby Stubberfield. I don't know, some of you might remember him, but they did find his remains and was buried at Arlington. I think at that time some of the city council flew there for his burial. And in the McDuffie family, we still have a missing in action relative, and in the past we have dealt with Hawaii, where they were working on some of the DNA, and the brothers and different people have given DNA. And at this point, as we know, there's no working right now in North Korea. So we're very interested in preserving the memory of all the people who have served this community.
Thank you. Council, do you?
Well, watch out.
I appreciate your consideration, and we'll try to save it.
Thank you. Council, got any questions for them at all at this time?
So basically just like a rental property, it won't be anything that'll be open on a nightly basis or anything like that?
No, I'm thinking like weekend kind of thing, Friday night. But like I said, if it's marketed properly and it's a beautiful setting, then businesses may hear about it and say, okay, well, they can get this place rented at a decent price, and they can meet kind of centerpiece, because we are kind of in the center of North Carolina.
I think it's a great idea. I think that y'all have done a great thing by purchasing and making an investment in the town, and
Thank you.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I am too. I see it as a good thing, something
I agree.
that brings something good to Hamlet.
Yep.
I'm in favor of it.
I will just ask one question. You got a big piece of property down there. Think about having some parking down in there.
Yep.
Try to get those people off the street. You're gonna have some crowds down
Yeah,
there.
every day I ride by there, I'm like,
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We
Okay.
appreciate it. Y'all can have a seat.
Thank y'all.
Ms. Strickland, could you give us comments on this, about what it is and what they're trying to do?
Thank you. The property itself is zoned residential, even though it was a VFW 50, 60 years or so. But even if it was zoned for commercial, our ordinance says that any time a special event venue is applied for, it does come before council. serving as the Board of Adjustment. So as I've spoken with Ms. Jenkins and her son and Ms. McDuffie over the last couple of months, their ideas are evolving as they get in and find different things, but the main idea is that they do want to have a special event venue, somewhere that they will rent out to have parties, to have meetings, weddings, that type thing. They have ample space for parking. They just have to make it on the area there. Any
Okay,
other questions?
just so that I get you on the record here, in your opinion, the application is complete, development is complete as proposed in the application, and it will comply with all applicable conditions, standards, and regulations set forth within the ordinance?
Yes, it will.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that had comments on this? Anyone else? Okay. Over those two. At this time, if there's nothing further for the council from anyone in the audience, we will close the public hearing at this time. Moving along to finding of facts by the board. I'm going to go over these facts. The application is complete, and if the development is completed as proposed, and we do have that from our city employee that stated that all that is good. The use will not materially endanger public health or safety if located where it's proposed and developed according to the plan submitted. Does anyone have a problem with that? Okay. The use will not substantially injure the value of adjacent or abutting properties. No problems with that, okay? I think the city owns abutting properties anyway, don't they? Okay, at this time, if all of that is in order, council, do you wish at this time to grant the application special use for that property?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So
There was
move to
just-
approve.
Okay, hold on.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but there was just a fourth finding. It's kind of buried at the bottom there. It's the location and character of the use, if developed according to the plans as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which
Right.
it is located.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, I kind of did that part of it on the other page.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. So if everyone is okay with that, I do have a motion from Mr. Bowie.
I'll second.
And a second from Mr. Martin. Has anyone else got any comments on it, additions, deletions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise.
And,
Okay.
and just one other thing, Mr. Mayor, given that we've already got the proposed findings of fact in this document and the hearing was so short, I think this can constitute the written documents. I don't really see any need for this to come back to you all for final approval next
Okay.
month, unless the manager or Gail thinks differently. So, okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so you all are good to go. Thank you so much. We appreciate what you're doing. If you find anybody else that wants to put a business in Hamlet, send them to see us. If there are those things that we can help you with, let us know, David. Okay, where's my paperwork here? Okay, item number 9 has to do with adoption of ordinance 2017-04, demolition of 201 Monroe Avenue. That's enclosure 3 in your paperwork. Ms. Strickland, comments?
Thank you again. This is a parcel that I know you are familiar with. It's at the intersection of Monroe Avenue and 177. Vacant building that actually became the site of a hangout over the past few months. In fact, there was someone that was shot there. The police found him on the property. We did have it inspected September the 9th of 2016, severely dilapidated. Tried to make contact with the property owner as far as sending certified and regular mail. Certified mail was returned to us. The regular mail did not. So we are asking council to issue an ordinance to demolish this property. Then we will follow the guidelines set by the North Carolina General Statutes to have it removed.
Council, what are your wishes on
Make a
this?
motion to
Yeah,
approve.
I've got a motion to demolish. Need a second?
Second.
Got a second from Councilman Bowie. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Okay, item number 10 is adoption of ordinance number 2017-05, demolition of 8 Raleigh Street, better known as the old Yanks Garage. Comments on that, Strickland?
Yes. As you stated, this is the old Yanks Garage. My understanding is that the property owners are deceased. At one time, I did have contact with a son, but no longer do. The building itself is creating a problem for the adjacent property owners. They share a common wall. And because of that, the existing business next door has had issues over the years, which they've come to the city about. So our plan at this time would be to do a partial demolition. Jonathan, the city manager, Billy Stubbs, and myself have gone and looked at it. We've also had the Richmond County Building Inspector come and look, and our fire marshal, fire chief, Calvin White, as well. So what we plan to do is actually remove the roof, remove all the inside, and leave the outer walls of it. We just don't want to do anything that's going to harm that existing business there. Billy Stubbs has spoken with the owners there, and they have agreed, and we will certainly want to do a contract of some sort that says what removal of this wall, they will go back and do the repairs. There's going to be some exposed beams, some rafters that are shared between the two buildings. So the business owners have said that they will certainly, they're so glad that what we're doing, that they will come and do what's needed to make sure their building is secure. So once again, we are asking that council would give us this ordinance for a partial demolition of the property.
And this is safe, the way they're gonna go about it?
That's why we had the Richmond County Building Inspector to come to make sure. And really, I was surprised when we went in it. There are very few walls inside of it. There's like a little office space, maybe 2 small walls and all in there. I think we'll just leave the concrete floor. We'll really just remove that roof. It'll be cut down the side. And we're going to make sure that it's done correctly, of course, before we proceed. But I think it will make a big difference for the, especially those adjoining property owners. They have really suffered with this over the last 10 years or so.
Well, let's just, again, like you were saying, let's make darn sure that whoever demolishes it has got the proper insurance, and
Yes,
that
sir.
they understand if they damage Mr. Shankle's wall, they're going to be responsible for repairing it.
Well, like I say, we will get a contract with Mr. Shankle prior to so we
Okay.
know who's on what, who's responsible for what, and with the demolition contractor as well.
Very good. Thank you. Council, what are your wishes on the removal of the old Yanks building?
Just one quick question.
Yes,
With
go
the
ahead.
owners being deceased, does that ease up our access to get that property? Or it still the long?
No, we still, the requirements are, unless we go through, like tax, for tax purposes or whatever, we are allowed by the general statutes to place a lien on it for all of the expenses we incur. But we do not gain ownership of any property that we demolish unless we go through a
Right,
tax.
I didn't know if maybe since they were deceased, would it be an easier path? Because I'm thinking maybe, I don't know, that the owners of the other properties may be interested in that.
Yeah,
And, just a thought.
right.
Just to add to what Ms. Strickland said, we can, of course, use the minimum housing authority, even if the owners are deceased, to go on the property, do the work that needs to be done, but we can't really, the process doesn't change for us. And really, the property owners on either side want to buy the property. Of course, they could talk with whoever the heirs are, but there's really not anything we can do with that short of foreclosure process.
Okay.
Yeah, there was some interest before from Shankles about maybe buying the property, and they got to looking at it, and there may very well be contamination down there, because it was the old Bennett Motor Company at one time, I believe was the name of it, and then it was Yanks Garage. So there was some concerns from anybody about purchasing it, so I know the city doesn't want it. Okay, I got a motion and a second on that. Any further comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye. And opposed likewise. Thank you. Opposed likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. We appreciate that.
Here, I'll add to that. Gail, if I was there, I'd have to come down and shake your hand. That first property has been an eyesore for this city for a long time, and we've had yellow tape around that area a couple of times, and so we're finally getting to get rid of some of this stuff that's posing problems in these neighborhoods and those areas coming into Hamlet. So, thank you so much for all the work on that.
Mr. Bowie was referring to the 201 Monroe Avenue out up at the corner of 177 and Monroe Avenue. At this time, we'll have a presentation by Ms. Thornsberry regarding Old Fashioned Christmas event. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So, this is the first year that I'll be in charge of Old Fashioned Christmas. And some of the ideas that I have vary from the previous Old Fashioned Christmases on as far as the entertainers go. There's a troupe, an entertainment troupe out of Wilmington, North Carolina, that's called the Mezzanine Beacombe Troupe. And they have jugglers, they have a stilt walker, balloon makers, and they have elves that man a giant bubble machine. And not just a giant machine, but it makes giant bubbles, which I thought was really cool. But one of the things that they would do is the juggler would work 2 hours as a juggler and then 2 hours as a balloon maker. And I just thought that these things would be a good idea. And the stilt walker would be dressed as a snow queen, because the main goal for me was to keep with kind of the Victorian wear, but change the entertainers. Because one of the problems when I talk to people that I noticed, and myself included because I've got kids, is people quit coming because it was always the same. So my idea was to bring something new while keeping with the tradition to see if we could bring more people in. The group would be $1,500 for the performers, and that would include their travel time and all of that too. Each performer would wear the Victorian attire, but I just think this is an opportunity to try something new, and the giant bubble machine manned by elves I think would be an awesome photo opportunity for people.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Is the mayor of Hamlet Avenue, Bernice, has she been consulted? Is she in favor of this? Is this her? Has she been consulted about these changes or bringing this group in? Is she,
Well, as far as I knew, this would just be Main Street. As far
are you
as I
talking
knew,
about Old Fashioned? That's on Hamlet Avenue, isn't it?
it's on both. It's on Hamlet Avenue Friday night and then Main Street on Saturday night.
I thought that was just called Old Fashioned on the other side on Hamlet Avenue.
No, it's both of them. And as far as I knew, previous to this, was Bernice had taken the money up herself to do her events.
Okay, so you're referring to Main
Main
Street?
Street, correct.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
And just as a point of clarification, Council, in March, Council decided that we would not be giving the $2,500 that we had been giving each year to HBDA for the Old Fashioned Christmas, being Hamlet Avenue on Friday night and Main Street on Saturday night. Mm-hmm. And instead, we would be allocating this money to our downtown curator to use. The question that I think Mrs. Thornsberry and I have for you tonight is, with the proposal that she's made being around $1,500, the remaining $1,000, it would be my recommendation or suggestion that council discuss that the $1,000 that Mrs. Thornsberry and myself and Mrs. Owens work towards some type of compensation for Hamlet Avenue, not giving the money to Mrs. Owens directly, but funneling the funds through the city to pay for a present for the old-fashioned Christmas on Friday night on Hamlet Avenue. But of course, I would defer to council's wishes or comments to this matter.
Is the same amount of money given to Main Street as opposed to?
And Mr. Martin, I believe that $1,500 is what Mrs. Thornsberry is looking at for the event on Main Street, with $1,000 being left over for Old Fashioned Christmas on Hamlet Avenue. And it's my understanding that $1,000 would be sufficient for Old Fashioned Christmas on Hamlet Avenue. That's my understanding, that $1,000 should cover the cost of what is needed on Hamlet Avenue.
We would like to ask Stephanie to be sure to coordinate with Bernice on what's done over there, because Bernice done an excellent job over every year, so y'all get your heads together.
She couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay. Just said coordinate with you. Y'all get your heads together.
$1,000 is all I need.
Okay. Well, you work with Stephanie on it.
I have one request. If we have horses, can they be diapered? We've got.
We don't have the same rules that we did have in. It was different last year and we different this year. Mr. Jones is no longer in the business. However, his associate is, and we do not have the stinking horses that we had before.
Thank you. I just. It left a lingering effect from Old Fashioned Christmas. That's all. Thank you.
Well, now, we're gonna have horses on Hamlet Avenue,
But
but it's gonna be different.
are they gonna be diapered, we'll call it?
Let's put it this way, they do not poop in the street. So I don't know if they're diapered or
Well,
not.
Careful now.
We can make sure that they're diapered.
I know there are ordinances in Charleston and places that they have equipment. They have equipment, how about that, to handle, we're on the same page, thank you, that's all I.
Oh, goodness. Okay, Mr. Orangeberry, do you have any questions for us?
I did not. Did you have any more for me?
Not
Has there been any talk between you and
Not
Hamlet
since,
Avenue?
not since everything first switched over,
Okay.
as far as Old Fashioned Christmas and like July 4th. But I wouldn't mind working with her at all. It wouldn't be
Thank
a
you.
problem at all.
I have one further comment about Hamlet Avenue. I was there, well, I usually go every time, but I was there last year, and I recall the lighting over there is not good. Over Main Street, you have no issue. There's plenty of street lighting with a different type of light. You couldn't even hardly see the little dancers, the children in the street, and people would come up to sing. You couldn't even hardly see them, to tell you the truth. It's too dark. Is there any way that we can get more lighting over there, whether it's portable lighting or
We can certainly look into it, Mr.
something?
Martin, to see
It's
what we
too
can do.
dark over there.
Let me say this, if you'll get with me on that, I will have you floodlights down there.
All right. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Lewis is the one that brought the lights over when he was with us, and perhaps if we talk to him, he might.
I've got a truck that's got 2 complete light sets on it with the towers, and we'll work on getting those down there that night for Friday night.
And also, Mr. Martin, you wanted to know the snowman that blows the snow.
Uh-huh.
We got one,
Well, good.
so that makes us 2.
I've noticed the kids down there really like that little snowman that blows the snow, but there's only one down there, and 2 would make a big difference. Good.
That would be nice, yeah, that is nice. Okay, thank you so much, we appreciate you coming in tonight. At this time, we have several items that the city manager wishes to bring to the attention of council, and at this time, we will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item that I have is a revision to the personnel policy. There have been 2 substantive changes that I've made over the past few months. I've went through and done a comprehensive and thorough review of the policy in regards to numbering, formatting, and things of the like, and I have done an overhaul of that. The first main thing that has been changed is Article 12 and 13 have been rearranged. There have been no changes in those 2 articles. They've simply been changed of where they're located at the end of the personnel policy. The second is Article 6, Section 5, revises requirements of performance evaluations. This makes the requirements a little less stringent for department heads when reviewing and completing performance evaluations on employees. The third change is in Article 7, Section 7, in regards to inconsistencies regarding paid and unpaid leave for employees while they are on drug testing. This is a matter that we had discussed in the spring, and those changes have been made. And lastly, there have been comprehensive and consistent grammatical revisions made throughout the policy, and comprehensive and consistent numbering and formatting made throughout the policy. I'll be glad to answer any questions that council may have, but I'm just looking for a motion to approve these changes to implement the newly revised recommended personnel policy.
Council, what are your wishes on the changes to personnel policy?
Make a motion to approve.
A motion to approve?
Second.
Second.
Have a second? Any further comment from council on this? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose likewise. Thank you.
The second item that I have for council tonight is a draft volunteer policy that I have composed and the city manager, or the city attorney, has reviewed. As of now, the city has no formal volunteer policy for people who come onto city property to volunteer at the depot board, at Parks and Rec, at the senior center. This is a simple policy. It requires a 15-year-old minimum age in order to volunteer on city property, unless there are prior arrangements beforehand. For example, the Cubs or the Boy Scouts want to get in some hours for volunteer work, or the Beta Club, that a prior agreement is made between the city and those organizations to allow them to come on for a specific purpose. And the second requirement of the volunteer policy is just a waiver of liability to attempt to shield the city from any liability that may incur while these volunteers are on city premises. This would not apply to employees, for example, that work at the concession stands at Parks and Rec taking up money. Those are city employees. They are on the city payroll and are, of course, bound by our personnel policy. This would apply only to people who are uncompensated and coming to work on city property.
So I have one question about that. So for 15 years or younger, you would have to have pre-arrangements made. In other words, like you said, Beta Club, hours and all for that, and then just a waiver of liability. That's it, right?
That is correct, Mr. Bowie, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, because I think you and I talked about this, and at one time it was brought up that without a parent, present, they couldn't do it. So I just want to make sure that.
I would think they would have to have adult supervision, or I think that should be a requirement.
I think we're overlapping two issues. First, if we have a group of students or a group of scouts, there would be a chaperone. There would be a group of them together. But if it's just a single person or single child under the age of 15, or that is 15 between 15 and 18, they would need a chaperone present for just an isolated one-time volunteership. And again, something else the city attorney and I have spoken about, the draft policy that I have composed applies to people that are volunteering long-term. People that are short-term, one-day events, just a simple liability waiver we feel would be sufficient to cover the city in that particular incident. Does that answer your question, Mr. Bowie?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, what you need to do on it, y'all need to go ahead and get it written up and bring it back to council for formal approval.
I believe I sent it to council, Mr. Mayor, and I have a copy here if you would like me to put it up.
That I've got.
I don't believe that is attached in the agenda, no, sir, or in the agenda packet.
Okay.
But I have it here if you would like me to put it up. But
Yeah,
I believe I
think
sent
you
it to
should.
council.
I think we need to look at
Sure.
it. I don't like to ask council.
While he's doing that, I have one question, and Mr. Morphy can probably answer this. What about court-appointed community service work?
I haven't spoken with the courts, but I'd take the position that they still have to have permission from the city
So they
to.
would still need to follow that same, I mean, that's something that could easily fall through the cracks.
Sure, no, I think that's right. I mean, the way Mr. Blanton drafted this, I think it's a good idea, is it's designed to cover really all kinds of volunteering. So this.
Over Main Street, you have no issue. There's plenty of street lighting with a different type of light. You couldn't even hardly see the little dancers, the children in the street, and people would come up to sing. You couldn't even hardly see them, to tell you the truth. It's too dark. Is there any way that we can get more lighting over there, whether it's portable lighting or
We can certainly look into it, Mr.
something?
Martin, to see
It's
what we
too
can do.
dark over there.
Let me say this, if you'll get with me on that, I will have you floodlights down there.
All right. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Lewis is the one that brought the lights over when he was with us, and perhaps if we talk to him, he might.
I've got a truck that's got 2 complete light sets on it with the towers, and we'll work on getting those down there that night for Friday night.
And also, Mr. Martin, you wanted another snowman that blows the snow.
Uh-huh.
We got one,
Well, good.
so that makes us 2.
I've noticed the kids down there really like that little snowman that blows the snow, but there's only one down there, and it's 2 would make a big difference. Good.
That would be nice, yeah, that is nice. Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming in tonight. At this time, we have several items that the city manager wishes to bring to the attention of council, and at this time, we will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item that I have is a revision to the personnel policy. There have been 2 substantive changes that I've made over the past few months. I've went through and done a comprehensive and thorough review of the policy in regards to numbering, formatting, and things of the like, and I have done an overhaul of that. The first main thing that has been changed is Article 12 and 13 have been rearranged. There have been no changes in those 2 articles. They've simply been changed of where they're located at the end of the personnel policy. The second is Article 6, Section 5, revises requirements of performance evaluations. This makes the requirements a little less stringent for department heads when reviewing and completing performance evaluations on employees. The third change is in Article 7, Section 7, in regards to inconsistencies regarding paid and unpaid leave for employees while they are on drug testing. This is a matter that we had discussed in the spring, and those changes have been made. And lastly, there have been comprehensive and consistent grammatical revisions made throughout the policy, and comprehensive and consistent numbering and formatting made throughout the policy. I'll be glad to answer any questions that council may have, but I'm just looking for a motion to approve these changes to implement the newly revised recommended personnel policy.
Council, what are your wishes on the changes to personnel policy?
Make a motion to approve.
A motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Have a second. Any further comment from council on this? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose likewise. Thank you.
The second item that I have for council tonight is a draft volunteer policy that I have composed and the city manager, or the city attorney, has reviewed. As of now, the city has no formal volunteer policy for people who come onto city property to volunteer. The depot board, at Parks and Rec, at Senior Center. This is a simple policy. It requires a 15-year-old minimum age in order to volunteer on city property, unless there are prior arrangements beforehand. For example, the Cubs or the Boy Scouts want to get in some hours for volunteer work, or the Beta Club, that a prior agreement is made between the city and those organizations to allow them to come on for a specific purpose. And the second requirement of the volunteer policy is just a waiver of liability to attempt to shield the city from any liability that may incur while these volunteers are on city premises. This would not apply to employees, for example, that work at the concession stands at Parks and Rec taking up money. Those are city employees. They are on the city payroll and are, of course, bound by our personnel policy. This would apply only to people who are uncompensated and coming to work on city property.
So I have one question about that. So for 15 years or younger, you would have to have pre-arrangements made. In other words, like you said, Beta Club, hours and all for that, and then just a waiver of liability. That's it, right?
That is correct, Mr. Bowie, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, because I think you and I talked about this, and at one time it was brought up that without a parent, present, they couldn't do it. So I just want to make sure that.
I would think they would have to have adult supervision, or I think that should be a requirement.
I think we're overlapping two issues. First, if we have a group of students or a group of scouts, there would be a chaperone. There would be a group of them together. But if it's just a single person or single child under the age of 15, or that is between 15 and 18, they would need a chaperone present for just an isolated one-time volunteership. And again, something else the city attorney and I have spoken about, the draft policy that I have composed applies to people that are volunteering long-term. People that are short-term, one-day events, just a simple liability waiver we feel would be sufficient to cover the city in that particular incident. Does that answer your question, Mr. Bowie?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, what you need to do on it, y'all need to go ahead and get it written up and bring it back to council for formal approval.
I believe I sent it to council, Mr. Mayor, and I have a copy here if you would like me to put it up.
That I've got.
I don't believe that is attached in the agenda, no, sir, or in the agenda packet. Okay. But I have it here if you would like me to put it up. But yeah, I believe I sent it to council.
I think we need to look at it. I don't like to ask council.
While he's doing that, I have one question, and Mr. Morphy can probably answer this. What about court-appointed community service work?
I haven't spoken with the courts, but I'd take the position that they still have to have permission from the city.
So they would still need to follow that same, I mean, that's something that could easily fall through the cracks.
Sure, no, I think that's right. I mean, the way Mr. Blanton drafted this, I think it's a good idea, is it's designed to cover really all kinds of volunteering. So this could also be used if you want to apply for a city board or that sort of thing. It also gives consent for if the city feels like you need to do a background check, you can. So it's a kind of that whole range of volunteers. But I'd say, the court can tell someone they do community service for the city, but the city still has to approve the person.
Okay.
What if we'll say the Beta Club wanted to send individuals down here on on a small basis? I mean, is that,
That could be an
is it-
agreement that's worked out with the Beta Club, whereas if they want to send 2 or 3 together, they can work out a form, that would require a formal agreement between the city and the Beta Club based on these particular standards.
It sounds like we're getting too many agreements.
Okay, Mr. Morphus has a comment.
Yeah, let me just clarify. So the idea for this is, if you're going to be volunteering on a recurring basis, you know, you volunteer at the depot, you volunteer, you know, in one of the sports leagues or something. It's an application you can fill out. If you're coming to just do something like a litter cleanup or something for a few hours in a day, you just sign the liability waiver so that the city doesn't have the liability, but you don't have to go through the whole application process. And I think what Mr. Blanton's trying to do is have a single application for kind of all of our long-term volunteers.
Correct. Whereas if it is an isolated event, let's just say Beta Club, for example, that wants to send 2 students down to the city lake to clean up for the day or something along those lines, all they would need to do is just sign a simple waiver without going through this formal application with name, emergency contacts, and things of the like.
But what if you've got an entire Boy Scout unit, or like our Leos just got through doing,
Sure.
how are they gonna, did just a leader come in and sign one of those for the organization, or?
That would, I would think with the Leos, because those are, correct me if I'm wrong, preteen age, that the leader, the chaperone, to come in and sign a liability waiver would be sufficient for that.
That's what I'm saying, entire club.
Yes, sir.
Whatever that-
Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
And this is the volunteer application that we have. Up here are the requirements that we have. As I said, 15 years or older, with an asterisk so that if there are some different circumstances that we can evaluate that on a case-by-case basis to complete this application. And here we have just personal information, including name, address, any type of criminal activity that they may need to disclose, emergency contact information, former memberships in any city boards, if any, conflicts of interests, any additional information that the person wishes to disclose. And then here we have at the bottom, going into the 3rd page, the waiver in regards to releasing the city from any type of liability for anything that may occur on city property.
Thank you.
I got a question.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Mr. Martin.
Who approves the application? In other words, somebody comes in, volunteers, and signs all the paperwork. Who looks at it and who approves it?
It would go through the city manager's
Okay,
office.
all right, just want to be sure.
So there won't be any spontaneous volunteering, I guess.
Well, as long as they come in and
I don't know, just come in, fill out the application, and let the city manager approve it.
walk out the door with it.
Right, or a waiver if it's a one-day event.
Or turn it down, whatever he's gonna do.
So, any child at 14, unless they're with the group, can't volunteer, is this what we're saying? This is what you're trying to
No.
say?
Not without supervision.
Not without
It
supervision.
can be a special. That's why that asterisks up there.
I really think that some type of formal volunteer policy needs to be in place. We do not have one from a
agree.
liability
Well,
standpoint.
you- problem with that.
what you got up there and what you sent me is not the same thing. That asterisk's not on here.
In regards to what I sent out last Tuesday, Mr. Lindsay,
Yeah, I get it.
I believe Mr. Morphus reviewed the agreement, and these changes were brought back to me today, or yesterday or today, late yesterday evening or today.
Would you just explain why the volunteer policy is needed?
Sure, because I have concerns with people that are under the age of 15 on city property without any type of supervision or any type of liability from the city standpoint. I believe it's incredibly necessary that we have a shield of protection should we have people on city property that are uncompensated. And furthermore, I think a log is really necessary of who we have volunteering. And should we need further background checks, as Mr. Morphus indicated, I really think that from a liability standpoint, this volunteer application is a good step forward in ensuring that the city is safe and covering the city from any type of unforeseeable events that may come into fruition.
And is this what you would consider standard operating procedure for cities?
Absolutely, I have compared and
That's
contrasted.
fair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Morphus, would you agree with that as well?
I do. I think having something formal like this is excellent. You know, really, I'd offer 2 recommendations. You can take either one. One would be, if you need to consider it some more, or want to look at the changes, which just Mr. Blanton said, I didn't get changes to him until fairly late. you could table it till next meeting, or you could adopt it, and then, so you've got something, and then if changes need to be made or tweaked, they can be made at the next meeting. But I think one or the other, having adopted formal policy is prudent.
And you looked over this policy and made the changes?
I did. In fact, the asterisk is there because I asked Mr. Blanton to put it there.
I make a motion, we accept this.
I second the motion.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Mr. Bowie, do you have any comments?
No comments. I've kind of talked about all this prior.
Okay, Mr. Lindsay, anything?
I think we're just restricting, I think I understand the legalities. I think this ought to be a younger age. I've seen kids that are talented and can do. We had them out at the ballparks. I have a question. Does this cover all the city property?
I hope so.
Yes, sir. It's
so
not specific to one particular department or one particular event. It would be on any city property
if they're
blanket.
at the fairgrounds, they're at the ballpark,
Correct.
Yeah.
at the library, or is, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Basically, anywhere that a child could be, that anything could happen, and it's basically covering the child. It's covering the city. So essentially, I think what's being said here is, hey, 15 years old, you can get a permit to work, i.e., concession stands, calling soccer games or baseball games or whatever it may be. But if you're coming in as a 13-year-old, then obviously it's going to have to be some kind of supervised type event, which you really shouldn't have a 13-year-old working a concession stand anyway. A little bit too young, dealing with some of the public parents that's out there and all that. So it's a protection. And I agree with you. We're going to cut off some of the kids, but there's plenty to be able to help and do what needs to be done.
And just what I was going to say to address Mr. Lindsay's concern, you could change the asterisk sentence to say something like, some volunteer positions might have higher or lower minimum age requirements. Now we have a policy in place, but the manager and department head want to get together and say, well, you could have younger kids for something that's going on at the depot or whatever. You could do that on a case-by-case basis. I don't have an issue with that. I think the wisdom is having a presumptive minimum age, and then you look at other things as they come up.
Well, and also it says the chaperone must be present. If you're under 18, you can join the Army at 17 with your parents' permission. Your Eagle Scouts, how old were some of those kids? 17, 16, 17?
15.
You know.
But they were supervised.
I know, but don't you feel like on a kind of an individual basis that they might not need a they're out there wherever they're going to be. I would imagine they're going to be with some city supervision.
Scout policy does not allow that. They have to have.
Is your biggest heartburn with this the age, or is it with just the form itself?
I think there's smarter kids out there.
The limit and the spontaneous.
Well, I can understand the liability in there. I mean, I'm not.
That's it in a nutshell.
But I didn't think there were stipulations on. Okay, so if you've got a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old, or if there's a group, then there's no supervision needed, right?
It would be on a case-by-case basis. Yeah. As we said earlier, if the Scouts or the Beta Club wanted to have a group down there, that would be something that they could submit to the city for review. But just for one
what about a 15-year-old working a concession stand in a ball game?
They would be a city employee, Mr. Bowie. They wouldn't be covered under the volunteer application. Yeah. They're on payroll. That would be covered as a matter of personnel, as they would be a city employee. This would not apply to any type of city employee who's being compensated. This is simply for uncompensated city employees, or uncompensated volunteers who are working on city premises.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'm opposed. Just
opposed. Okay, got one opposed.
I understand the
3, 4, 1 against.
Is there any way you can hook that up to the website where somebody can print that off and bring
Sure.
it?
No.
Sure.
I would ask you, Mr. Manager, in the future not to send out proposals to one councilman and not the rest of us.
Oh, I didn't, Mr. Mayor.
No, it was in the
last Tuesday. I believe it was last Tuesday.
Everybody.
It went to council and the mayor. I sent
Okay,
this
well,
along
we
with
do
the
need this in front of us when we're
Sure.
talking about.
And I will make sure that you, from this point forward, have it in front of you, and I'll make sure that a copy goes in with the minutes of the meeting for this evening.
That's good, with the agenda, that's right.
Yes, sir.
Everything was Wednesday when you did the.
Was it Wednesday?
Yeah.
It needs to be with the
Personnel
agenda.
policy and the tax releases and everything came then.
Right.
Okay, next item, purchasing policy.
Yes, sir. The city's purchasing policy has not been updated since 1994. It's fairly obsolete, fairly out of date. I have compared and contrasted purchasing policies from similarly sized municipalities across the state and merged those with our common practices that we use here at the city and combined that into a purchasing policy that outlines what our practices are as well as what general statutes allows for purchasing. The attorney has also reviewed this document. There's only been one change made since I sent this to you all last week, and that is just a pre-auditing provision that was added to it per the attorney's recommendation.
Mr. Borfus.
And the only reason that I wanted that in is because that's just required by state statute. It's the pre-audit certificate
Right.
that you see in a lot of, so otherwise, I thought the the purchasing policy looks good, and really does reflect general practice, I think, throughout the state for jurisdictions this size.
And I think it'll be helpful to staff to have an outline of a step-by-step guide for making purchases for the city, what we can and cannot do, and to have that in a comprehensive, updated purchasing policy. But I'll be glad to entertain any comments or discussion on the matter.
Council got any questions on that this time? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Okay, I have a
Second.
motion to approve. You got a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Okay. All right, tackle football program.
Sure. Council has requested that we revisit the issue of tackle football. 2 years ago, we didn't have enough teams to have two leagues. Normally, we have a 9 and 10-year-old league, a 10 and 11-year-old league. 2 years ago, the leagues were merged, and that was a source of some contention. So last year, we had a 9 and 10 league without a 10 and 11-year-old league for tackle football. I've spoken to our Parks and Rec director about this issue. He feels confident, or at least optimistic, that with the 10-year-olds that were in the program last year moving up into the, or 9-year-olds, excuse me, that are moving up into the second bracket, that we will have enough for 2 leagues this year. No way to know for certain. But in March, we discussed the issue, and we tabled the issue of tackle football to determine if there's enough for a program, and the suggestion was made that perhaps we do away with tackle football from a liability standpoint. As I said, I spoke to our Parks and Rec director. He would like to move forward in a manner similar to what we did last year, whereas we wait and see when the applications come in. If we have enough for 2 leagues, if we don't, then we don't, and we'll move forward with just having the 9 and 10-year-old league. But again, council had requested that this be discussed tonight, and that's just a little bit of background on where we are at with the issue currently.
Okay, one of the reasons I asked for this to be on there is I have had several people approach me, and I agree with them. We never did make an exact decision on this thing about weight classes because we didn't want a 10-year-old that weighed 150 pounds out there hitting a 10-year-old that weighed 100 pounds. So what, did we make any determination as to what to do on these size?
Best I can recall, the only determination we made was that the age brackets were separated and we wouldn't combine.
I know.
That's what we was talking about, 8-year-olds
And
against 12-year-olds.
that's what they did.
I know.
And that wasn't,
What's that, Jonathan? Go ahead, Mr. Booth.
That's what they did. I mean, they changed the. They didn't do the age where you had a big and a small. They didn't do that last season.
The first year, I believe when they combined the 11 and 12s, played with the 9 and 10s, they used the 9 and 10s weight classification. But
that was the first year.
Yeah, right, correct.
Had
And then after discussion came about, we felt like that the 11 and 12-year-olds were just more physically, and we didn't, as a council, want to do that. So it just left it as 9 and 10s,
Okay,
and
so
I think they're using the 9 and 10s.
The consensus of this council then is to go on with it like we've been doing, right?
Well, I've been reading, unfortunately, I know it's an unpopular thing. There was an article in the paper just last week before, about the amount of head injuries. And it was amazing. It was almost 90%. Now, these were a lot of them professional athletes, college very few use because they said the only way that they could confirm it is via autopsy. So, but it's.
I just don't want anybody to get hurt. I mean,
Well,
it'd be a
that's
bad
my
situation.
concern.
I want them to have fun, but
It's just the more information's coming out and it's becoming more of a dangerous thing.
and they do teach that now. Maury said they teach a class to these coaches every year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
How
that
to
was
hit and how
another thing
not
that we
to
had
hit.
talked about. We had not had any certified coaches that went to that training, but they said they were following the Heads Up program, but they didn't have the training, so.
The officials weren't trained,
Yeah.
the coaches weren't trained, so how can you really say you're, playing that way?
I mean, we're
But-
gonna do it, I wanna see us do it right with the training, and I think that it would be just as important to have the coaches trained as it would be have enough players to play,
I have to agree with you on that.
so.
I agree, Jesse, and I've heard so much about liability. We're so scared to do anything these days. We might as well go back to horse and buggy and stop driving up and down the road because you're just as likely to get killed in the car.
I mean, I guess we can't, you gotta wait and see if we have the people that's gonna sign up, and if we have the volunteers that's gonna coach, that's gonna go get the training.
And I would like just asking for general consensus of council that we are going to be moving forward with tackle football signups. We aren't going to do any tweaking to eliminate the program, any type of scale backs
I
of the
like at
program.
this point that we have time, that we work towards figuring out what we need to do for training for, if we're gonna play that type, but just to say we're playing it without any,
Well, I think the training's there. I think it's a, if I'm not mistaken,
That's
it's
my
a
understanding.
certified training that they would have to go and take the
but
training.
we didn't have anybody
We-
last year.
We never told them they had to do it, but we're told that they were doing it. So, I mean, I think you need to be officially trained before you do that.
I agree on that.
I mean, if we have the volunteers officially trained, and if we have the people that's gonna play,
We need to look into what it takes to get the training done
Right.
now, so it
Before.
doesn't slip up.
And I don't care about liability issues. I just don't want them to get hurt.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. And I will work
The
to make sure we have the
training
safeguards.
is something that, and my understanding, I mentioned Maurice's name, so I'm sure he's there tonight.
No.
No,
he isn't.
no, he's not here.
We talked about the training for 2 or 3 years now, and that's not just in football. I mean, I've brought up we need to do training for soccer. We need to do training for baseball, because what you have out there, you have little Timmy's dad that wants to be able to be out there with his son while he's playing, or daughter, and they need to know what they're teaching, because I've seen so many kids, not just football, soccer, you have head injuries and concussions, and it's because they're taught, they're not, let me rephrase that, they're not taught how to properly handle a ball. And it's just, we need to give basic training to the coaches if they're going to be out here with the kids in our programs.
yeah, I mean, I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay, so we don't really have to do anything on this tonight. It was just open for discussion.
Can I just like throw something out?
Can?
I mean, everybody that reads the paper or on Facebook, the travel football team, the big, the other football programs in the county now. I'd like to see the city maybe look at maybe having a separate season for the football at some point, because I think some of the reason that we're losing some of those participants is because they're playing in that league. You know, I'm not saying anything now, but I mean, at least look at it, you know, moving it back to where, you know, they may be able to play, because what you see is a lot of these travel programs, they've got a lot of kids that have the ability to go and play these games. It's the parents spend money and things of that nature. And then what our rec program does is allows the kids in our community an affordable way to play the game. And not saying that it would work, but you don't necessarily have to have both football programs going on at the same time. I mean, just something to mention to the Park and Rec folks.
I think that another thing that hurt the program was the middle schools now allow the sixth graders to play sports where they didn't a couple years ago, and I think that's could be some of your 12-year-olds and playing on the team sport, and that hurts. But I see what you're saying. If you can work it out,
It's just something to think about or look at. I mean.
Yeah. I mean,
Bill, can I say something?
yes, sir, if you'd like to.
Hamlet, Jerry Lamont, Hamlet football programs. If we don't have a football program, the kids that play in Hamlet now won't get to play. Because the kids that are playing travel ball, that's where they play. We got the Hamlet kid, or the kids in the county that play in Hamlet, are the kids that can't play out there because they won't take them. We're the only program in the county that are for the kids. No offense, all these travel teams are not for the kids. They're for the, like you said, the parents that can afford to send their young'uns, and they do. We furnish the programs for the kids, and most of the kids that play football are Hamlet's the only place they can play. And if you do away with it, then all them kids got nowhere to go.
That's what I just said, though.
Yeah,
You just
unless you go
basically repeated what I
to
said.
flag ball.
He just needed to get up there.
No, I'm just saying the truth that without our football program, the kids ain't got nothing. Because they ain't gonna play travel ball because they're not
We're
good
aware of
enough.
that. We're aware of that, and I think what you're hearing is that we just want to be safe. That's the main
I
thing.
agree with you.
And I
But
think
mean,
what you heard, I mean, you heard that we wanted to make sure that the safety procedures were followed.
Right,
We wanted to make sure that we had enough participants.
I agree.
Okay, and then to go a step further, I even offered a suggestion to where we may change the season to allow more of our Hamlet kids to play, to keep that program going. Because
See?
whether you like it or not, the travel ball is here.
Oh, yeah.
It's not going anywhere, and it is peeling away the people that play the rec ball.
all sports.
And I
Well,
just
see-
said that the folks in Hamlet that can't afford that, we're allowing them to do that.
See what you gotta look at too. If you move the football season, then you're gonna hurt your soccer season. Because your soccer kids are playing football when they get through playing soccer.
We can't win, can we?
No, I've done.
Well, there's some time in there where you can do some creative scheduling and get that program.
Yes, there is. Rockingham does it already, so.
They used to play almost together, and it didn't work out.
Right.
Because when the kids were still playing soccer and when they were signing up and practicing football, it was inconvenience. The coach says, "You're gonna play football, come play football and quit soccer."
Yeah. Well, I mean, just for the record, nobody said that we were gonna get away with doing
I know,
it. I
I'm
think
just-
we
I'm
were
just
talking
saying,
about trying to do everything we could do to make it safe and to continue it
I
with
agree.
as
All I'm
much
just saying
as
is
we could get.
that the
our
kids that are playing
playing.
football in Hamlet
Thank you, Jesse.
ain't got nowhere else to
That's
play.
right, and we're fully aware of
Because
that. That's why we got the program.
The travel coaches don't care. If you're a good kid, they want you. If you ain't a good kid, they don't care about you.
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna
All
jump
right,
to
let's
conclusions
move
on what
on.
somebody
Thank you,
does.
Jerry, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Let's move along.
That's an unfair assumption there, but
Item number 13,
what we're gonna do.
adoption of the budget amendments. Council, what are your wishes on the budget amendments?
Move to approve.
Got a motion to approve?
Second.
Have a second? Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Okay, also we had for us the annual charge to the city tax collector to collect for the 2017-18 fiscal year. These are listed as, goes all the way back to 2006 insolvents. Am I correct on that? Jennifer? Okay. Council, what are your wishes on that?
Move to approve.
Okay, I got a motion to approve. Need a second?
Second.
Have a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Thank you.
Can I ask her a question?
You certainly can. Go right ahead.
What was the collection rate for last year? If you have it, you may not have it.
Yeah, it was.
I think it was like 96.29.
96.
A little bit below, but not much.
Yeah. And I would just like to say that we have consistently been over that 95% threshold. When folks don't pay their taxes, it incurs the city not only the loss of the revenue from the taxes, but we have to advertise in the paper there's other things that we have to incur these expenses from, and that's a really good rate.
It is excellent. Next item is item number 15. I have a mayoral proclamation for the Chiara Malformation Awareness Month, September 2017. Whereas Chiara malformation is a serious and chronic neurological disorder in where cerebellum descends out of the skull, thereby compressing the brain stem and or spinal cord. And whereas symptoms shall usually appear during adolescence or early adulthood and conclude severe head and neck pain, vertigo, muscle weakness, balance problems, blurred or double vision, difficulty swallowing, and sleep apnea. And whereas there are no known preventive measures or cures, due to the lack of awareness and research of the disorder, persons and family can be under tremendous physical, mental, emotional, and economic strain. And whereas raising awareness of this traumatic disorder is essential to generating federal and private funding for research and a cure, now therefore, I, William Bayless, Mayor of Hamlet, proclaim month of September 2017 as Chiara Malformation Awareness Month in the city of Hamlet, and I urge all citizens to take part in activities and observances designed to increase awareness and understanding of Chiara malformation. Witness my hand and seal of the city of Hamlet on the 8th day of August 2017, William Bayless, Mayor. Next item of business, item number 16 is City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, the Hamlet Water Department has received the Area-Wide Optimization Program, also known as the AWOP Award this year. We have received this award in several years prior. It is the highest quality of drinking water award from the North Carolina Department of Environmental and Natural Resources. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of the excellent employees that we have at the Water Department. A lot of times they go unnoticed and unthought of, but one of the most vital assets that we have here in Hamlet is our water department, and they are there day in and day out, and this is certainly a testimony to what a great job they do out there. Second of all, the Hamlet Police Department participated in a countywide raid last week, which resulted in 11 arrests and 5 guns being seized. I wanted to thank them and the county for the great work that they did on those efforts. Also, the detective unit last week solved an armed robbery at the Circle K. They made an arrest in that case, so excellent detective work and police work on that front as well. As always, I want to thank the Public Works for the great job that they're doing. It's incredibly hot out there, and our garbage truck drivers and those who pick up garbage and leaf and limb and our meter readers and our landscapers are in and day out in the heat, and I appreciate all the work that they do. And also Mrs. Strickland has done an excellent job with getting the demolitions together and the quasi-judicial hearing tonight, so I certainly do appreciate all of her efforts on that front. And again, appreciate Mrs. Thornsberry being here tonight to make the presentation to council in regards to Old-Fashioned Christmas. And that is all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, council, any questions or comments for the city manager?
Just a comment. You've done a really good job updating these policies. From the standpoint of public administration, you need to have these policy updates on a routine basis. And I think you said one of them was last updated in 1994. And I would just like to commend you for going above and beyond, taking it upon yourself to realize we need to do that and getting that done.
Thank you, Councilman McQueen, and I appreciate council's cooperation on these issues tonight.
Okay, moving along, item number 17, the comments of council. Mr. McQueen?
Just one thing. One of the residents in Raintree asked about lighting at the end, if the city's got any means to have any street lights out there in the cul-de-sac area. There's a lot of parking, a lot of activities going out there involving drinking and things of that nature. I don't know where the last light ends, but I don't know if there's just maybe there and it's burnt out, or if it's maybe where we could get the light company to do something in that area.
Sure.
I remember there was a light out there in that area.
If you will provide me the address, Mr. McQueen, I'll be glad to look into that a little further to see what we can do.
Okay.
Glad
It's
to.
at the very end at the cul-de-sac.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lindsay?
Talked to Maurice the other day. He said the gym air conditioned, double thumbs up. Great. Thank council. I said it should have been done years ago, but he was just pat y'all on the back from that. And I see it as a game changer for our Parks and Rec, so many options in the summertime to help out from there. So he was very appreciative. Remind everybody the eclipse is on August the 21st. Should we get into this area as we're, I think, 96% or something, but it'll be around 2:45. And on the 21st right now is a tentative date for the DQ to open, so it could be an eclipse blizzard, I don't know. And remind everybody that school starts August the 28th, Monday the 28th, so be careful. You got people out there and kids out for new bus rides, all that kind of stuff. So that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Martin?
Well, we all know our city departments, all of them do a great job, and we appreciate it very much. But I want to say this, I did have a man that, I won't call his name, he moved in here from Pennsylvania. And he was very, very complimentary of how fast our trash pickup is. He says that when he does his yard, before he can even finish just about, they're out there cleaning it up and picking it up. He said where he was from, you almost had to beg the city to send somebody out there to pick the trash and the debris and stuff up. But he was complimenting the street department on that, how quick they were and how professional they were, and he was very appreciative. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Bowie?
Not a whole lot, Mayor. I do appreciate council allowing me to take this meeting by conference. Here lately I've been away quite a bit for work, and that's what puts food on the table for my family. So this trip here was a little different. It was because I've been gone so much with work. Me and the family actually decided to kind of take off for a few days and just get away from it all for just a little while. So do again appreciate you all letting me do it. I'm glad I got to be on the call. I appreciate everything everybody's doing. School is fixing to kick off here, along with our Parks and Rec programs are fixing to kick off. I have soccer starting up, and football to follow suit, and that's it's a busy time of the year. And everything staff's doing. I mean, it's I've gotten to pop in there every once in a while and check on everybody and talk to them and cut up, and that's always good to kind of it gets them a little bit off their game, and they're able to kind of talk and get away from a few things maybe on their mind, and that, trust me, I know what it's like. You need to kind of get unwound a little bit and talk to somebody about something different besides just the duties you're doing for that moment. So, I don't have anything else. Again, thank you guys for letting me be on tonight. Wish I could be there beside you, but I'll be there next month.
Thank you, Mr. Bowie. Okay, moving along, Mayor's comments. City manager forgot to mention September the 4th, Monday, September the 4th, Labor Day. City offices will be closed on that day. Billy, did you get your new bank mower? Okay. Have you got the old one working at all where you're getting these weeds? Weeds are growing so bad with all this rain.
We've got the car set, Ryan's working on it, it should have going probably by tomorrow.
Okay, very good. Also, I have been getting a couple of complaints over the last couple of weeks. Hadn't said anything about it, but people complaining about fire hydrants that are looking bad, and we've always kept our hydrants, paint and everything, looking good on them. So whatever we do on that, we need to encourage them to move along. Also, the Hamlet Lions Club sponsors a teenage group called Leo's. It's been around for years, and on July the 29th, along with their counselors, they went down to City Lake and they picked up over 10 bags of trash down there in about 3-4 hours. And we're very appreciative of them for doing that. It's such a mess down there. And are we doing anything on repairing that pier down there? What did we decide on that?
We repaired the pier for the damage of the vandalism that was done several months back. And we can certainly look into more of an overhaul on it. I think it is coming down the pipeline that we will have to do something about it, but it's been patched for the time being.
Don't know how many people use that till they start complaining that it hadn't been done. That's good. Other than that, I just want to thank all the city employees for what they do. Administration, you do a fantastic job. And police departments, you're really making headway over there with a lot of these investigations. And I know it's tough with no more people than you got in investigations. So other than that, everybody have a good Labor Day. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion, we adjourn.
Have a motion?
Second.
Got a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those likewise. Thank you.
Thank you, council.